In this video we're going to talk about stewardship theory. This of course applies to accountancy and the function of accountancy that looks after the assets of the business, looks after the business itself and all the different facets of the business in the interest of the owners, the shareholders. So stewardship theory, well, it contrasts with agency theory. Now this is the subject matter of a separate video, and one you should make sure you're aware of. Agency theory sees the organization in almost a state of conflict between, on the one hand, the principals, in other words the owners of the organization, and the agents, who are the managers. And it sees a conflict between the two because the management have a lot of power, because they have expert knowledge of the business, of the process of the business, the various processes it undertakes. They have expert knowledge of the suppliers and the routines and the technology, and so the managers are very powerful, and they're also quite cohesive. They all work within the environment. Whereas the shareholders can be quite dispersed and don't have the same degree of knowledge of the business. So the shareholders are weak, but the shareholders are the owners of the business. So the managers are therefore able to, in a sense, exploit their power. And they exploit their power by awarding themselves discretionary payments and bonuses and good working conditions and perks, and all of this is eating into the profitability of the business. So in other words, it's taking away from the shareholders who own the business. So there is a conflict between them. To resolve this, there are different approaches to corporate governance. Again, separate videos on the course on corporate governance. But stewardship theory stands in contrast to the agency view. Stewardship theory offers a different perspective of what's going on within the business. Stewardship theory sees managers as good stewards who will act in the best interest of the owners. So stewardship theory sees the managers as being committed to the business, being committed to paying good dividends to the shareholders and giving them security of investment, which is what really they require, and acting in an honourable and honest way. So stewardship theory is it's a perspective of management which sees the management as committed to the business, committed to the objectives of the business, and in dealing with the shareholders in a good manner, a manner which is consistent with the expectations of the shareholders when they first invested in the business. The steward's behaviour is pro-organisational and collectivist. Now, pro-organisational means they are committed to the business, they're committed to the organisation, and they're collectivist, they're working together. It's not individual managers working for themselves or trying to build up their own little empires within the business, their own little niches, and it's not like that. It's more a commitment to the overall organisation. They're much more collectivist, much more working together. So it's a good view of management. Where shareholder wealth is maximised, the steward's utilities are maximised too. So maximising the shareholders' wealth maximises the utilities or the utility of the stewards. In other words, the stewards get satisfaction out of making sure that the shareholders are well treated. The stewards, the managers who act in this capacity, they get utility, they get pleasure out of making sure the business is properly run and that the organisation is thriving and being successful and being open and honest. And they have a clear mission. They have a mission to ensure that the business is run correctly, run in the interest of the owners. Now you could say, of course, that this flies in the face of what we've done in agency theory, that it sees the managers as working for themselves, not for the owners. This particular view turns that on its head. The managers have stewardship over the assets. They're looking after the assets of the business. They're looking after the business in total. But they're looking after the business in the interest of the owners and in the interest of the business itself, ensuring that the business is going to have a future, it's going to be well run, it's going to be reputable, open, decent, honest. And they see themselves as functionaries performing this task. So they balance various interest groups as well. They try to come between interest groups and make sure that the various interest groups, their conflicting interests are resolved. I'll just go back to that for a second. By various interest groups here, we could have all sorts of interest groups. For example, trade unions, and the more that the workers want in terms of remuneration, the less there's available, of course, for the shareholders. So the managers, the stewards of the business, try to intervene and compromise and get the two sides reconciled. It could be there's a difference of opinion between the suppliers of raw materials and the buyers within the business in terms of price, delivery, quality. Again, other managers may intervene and negotiations take place and try to resolve the issue. So they're trying to constantly balance the competing demands from various interest groups. But they're doing it in a way which promotes the business, promotes the interests of the business, and looks after the owners of the business. Now, stewardship theory sees a strong relationship between managers and the success of the firm or the success of the business. And therefore, the stewards protect and maximize shareholder wealth through firm performance. I'll explain. The stewards see a strong relationship between the manager's success, between the managers and the success of the firm. The more the managers are involved and committed to the business, the more successful the business will be. They're more interested in the business. They're working towards improving the business. They're committed to the business. The stewards protect, therefore, and maximize shareholder wealth because they're looking after the business. They're looking after the shareholders. And they're doing this through getting a good performance from the business. Now, having said that, it's also worth noting that the stewardship that the managers are engaged in is also self-promoting. By promoting the business and promoting the interest of the shareholders and working openly and honestly, they're also promoting the, if you like, the longevity of the business, the capacity of the business to survive and to grow and to prosper. And therefore, they are looking after their own jobs, their own positions. And as managers of a successful business, they could expect better remuneration. So by acting in this decent way, this way of looking after the business and looking after the interest of the business and looking to resolve issues and problems and trying to promote the business through innovation and change and product development and all the things that good managers do. And looking after of course, the shareholders as well, I should add on there. But they're also looking after themselves. They're also promoting their own interests. A steward who improves performance successfully satisfies most stakeholder groups. So if a manager engaged in stewardship management, looking after the assets, the business, looking after the interests of the business, if they perform successfully, they're going to look after the workers, they're because the workers will have security of employment and perhaps better working conditions, better remuneration. They'll look after the suppliers of the raw materials because there'll be more orders and they'll be paid on time and have better relationships with the business. They'll look after all of the stakeholders. So good stewardship of the business leads to better relationship with the stakeholders and a better experience on the part of the stakeholders. The focus of stewardship theory is on structures that facilitate and empower rather than monitor and control. So it's much more trusting. This view of stewardship management looks at the structure of the business, looks at how the business is formed and how it operates, and tries to recognize that there are various groups within the organization. The workers on the line, the workers on the shop floor, the departmental heads, the line managers, all of the various people within the business are all stakeholders, and they've all got opinions and ideas, and perhaps it's best to empower them, give them responsibility over their own areas where possible, recognize that they have the best intentions towards the organization, and enable them to be engaged with the organization so that they are more motivated. And to do that as opposed to monitoring and controlling, which is much more suspicious of the motivations of the workers or of the various stakeholders. Monitoring and controlling sounds like the management do not trust the stakeholders, do not trust the workers, do not trust the management, the lower management. So instead of moving to that environment, empower the various contributors and work with them. So it's stewardship of the organization, it's looking after the organization, it's getting the participants in the organization to identify with the organization and to look after the organization because it's in their interest as well as the interest of the owners. Therefore, stewardship theory takes a more relaxed view of the separation of the role of chairman and CEO, and supports the appointment of a single person for the position of chairman and CEO. With the principal agent problem, that's the subject matter of another video, there was a mistrust, almost a breakdown between the owners of the organization, the shareholders, and the agents within the business, the managers. The managers were seen as promoting their own interests, and promoting their own interest at the cost of profits which would have gone to the owners of the business, the people who invested in the business. So the owners of the business, in a sense, fight back with the appointment of a board of directors. The board of directors work in the interest of the shareholders and monitor the managers to make sure the managers are working fairly and honestly. But there's a difference between the chief executive officer, who's, if you like, the most senior manager, and the chairman of the board of directors. So the recommendation was that there should be two people there so that there's no conflict of interest. The chairman is clearly monitoring the management, including monitoring the chief executive officer, to make sure there's no abuse, there's no issues arising which will mean a shift of power towards the management and perhaps more abuse of their power in terms of bonuses and perks and ways of not contributing towards the profitability of the business, the overall profitability of the business. So the two functions were kept apart. Well, with stewardship theory, there's much more trust in this view, and therefore A single person could have the position of chairman and chief executive officer because they're all working together. It sees a more harmonious organization where management and shareholders and the various stakeholders are all moving in the same direction because they believe it's in their interest to do so, and there is commitment on their part to move in that direction. So, in summary, stewardship theory is almost the antithesis, it's almost the opposite of the principal agent problem. This one sees the organization as more harmonious, it's moving together, the management are working in the interest of the shareholders and the stakeholders, and indeed working in their own interest. But there's no need for the shareholders to be alarmed that management are somehow cheating them or acting in nefarious ways regarding their efforts or their profitability or what they're taking out of the business. There's trust on all parts. The shareholders trust the managers. And the managers understand the role of the shareholders, and they understand the need to have good working relationships with all of the various stakeholders. So it's a more harmonious picture. It's the opposite almost of the, well, it is the opposite of the principal agent view. So that's a perspective of the organisation that we wish to put forward, the stewardship theory. And that's all we're going to deal with in this situation, so in this class. So let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.